Have you ever walked away from a conversation and thought, what the hell just happened? You weren't trying to argue. You weren't trying to offend. You were just talking. Yet somehow you ended up feeling manipulated, guilty, defensive, or drained. And the strangest part, it happens again and again with the same people. Different situation, same emotional trap. Now here's the chilling truth. You're not imagining it. And it's not an accident. People, even the ones closest to you, play psychological games every single day. Games of guilt. Games of blame. Games of control. Games of victimhood. Games of superiority, seduction, resentment, and power. Some play these games intentionally. Some play them unconsciously. But everyone plays them. And whether you realize it or not, you play them too. This is the world that psychiatrist Eric Berne exposes in his groundbreaking book Games People Play. A book that didn't just change psychology. It ripped the mask off human behavior and revealed what people are really doing beneath their polite conversations, their smiles, their excuses, and their hidden motives. Berne believed something radical. Most human interactions are not real conversations. They are carefully crafted emotional strategies, patterns, roles, and hidden scripts that people use to get what they want. Think about it. Why does that one friend always play the victim? Why does your coworker always blame others? Why does a simple discussion with your partner turn into a courtroom drama? Why do some people charm you, then confuse you, then control you? Because they're playing a game. And unless you understand the rules, you will always lose. Berne reveals that every conversation has two layers. The words we say, and the psychological agenda hidden underneath. Once you see that hidden layer, you can never unsee it. This book uncovers the games people play in marriages, friendships, workplaces, parties, therapy sessions, and everyday small talk. And the moment you understand these games, you'll start recognizing patterns everywhere. You'll see what people are doing while they think you're clueless. You'll understand their motives while they're still searching for the right words. And you'll finally be able to protect your peace, your confidence, and your emotional energy. So today, we're diving headfirst into the secret world behind human interaction. A world that most people never notice, until it's too late. If you've ever felt emotionally manipulated, if you've ever wondered why the same conflicts keep happening, if you've ever wanted to understand people on a deeper, almost X-ray level, then trust me, this is the video you don't want to miss. Because once we start breaking down these games, you will never look at people the same way again. Let's begin. Chapter 1: Structural Analysis. If you've ever had a conversation where someone's reaction felt completely out of proportion, maybe they exploded over something tiny or suddenly withdrew without explanation, you felt the invisible machinery of the mind at work. This is where Games People Play begins its journey, with structural analysis, the blueprint of why human beings behave the way they do, even when it makes no logical sense. Eric Berne tells us that humans are not one unified personality. We are three voices fighting for control inside the same mind. At times we think like an adult, calm and rational. At times we react like a scared child. And sometimes, without even trying, we imitate the tone, rules, and judgments of the authority figures who raised us. This internal shifting of identities is not random. It's the foundation of every relationship, argument, misunderstanding, and emotional conflict we experience. Berne calls these three states the parent, the adult, and the child. This is the heart of structural analysis, the idea that every conversation we have happens between versions of these states. You might believe you're speaking as an adult, but inside, your child might be crying for approval or your parent might be judging harshly. And because everyone around you also shifts between these three states, entire conversations can collapse into emotional chaos. The parent state represents the voices we absorbed growing up, the advice, warnings, punishments, expectations. This is why sometimes, even as adults, we hear ourselves scolding someone with the exact tone our mother or father used. The parent is powerful because it operates automatically. It tells us what is right, what is wrong, and what is dangerous. But it can also make us rigid, overly critical, or controlling without realizing it. The adult state is our logical processor, the part of us that can pause, analyze facts, and respond without emotional distortion. The adult doesn't assume, doesn't judge, and doesn't panic. It simply evaluates. According to Berne, the healthiest and most productive interactions happen when two people communicate adult to adult. But in reality, this is rare. Most people stay trapped in emotional reactions instead of logical responses. And then comes the child, the raw emotional core. This state carries our creativity, joy, curiosity, and spontaneity. But it also holds all our fears, insecurities, and unprocessed pain. Berne explains that many people unknowingly allow their child to run their entire lives, reacting impulsively, seeking approval, rebelling, or fearing rejection even when no such danger exists. When someone overreacts, plays the victim, or seeks validation obsessively, it is usually the child's state speaking. Structural analysis helps us see that conflicts happen when the states mismatch. A parent scolds while a child defends. A child begs for attention while an adult gives cold facts. A parent sets rules while the other person's child rebels. This mismatch explains why two people can argue for hours without ever solving anything. They are not speaking from the same psychological level. The chapter goes deeper, revealing an unsettling truth. Most people are not aware of which state they are operating from. They think they are being rational, when in fact their child is reacting emotionally. They think they are giving feedback, when their parent is actually criticizing. They think they're having a normal conversation, while their partner is speaking from a wounded child. This lack of awareness is what leads to manipulation, miscommunication, emotional games, and relationship breakdowns. Berne insists that the first step to understanding human behavior is to identify which ego state you're in, and which one the other person is speaking from. It is only after recognizing the internal structure of the mind that we can understand the games people play. Chapter 1 ends with a powerful message. Before we can analyze others, we must learn to analyze ourselves. Which voice is driving us? Which voice is controlling our relationships? And how many of our reactions are not really ours, but inherited scripts playing on repeat? Structural analysis is not just a chapter. It's the psychological map that helps us understand why people say one thing, feel another, and do something completely different. It is the first step toward decoding the emotional games that shape everyday life. Chapter 2: Transactional Analysis. Imagine this. You think you're having a simple conversation, maybe asking someone a question, giving advice, or explaining how you feel, but suddenly the other person snaps, shuts down, gets defensive, or takes it the wrong way. You're left thinking, what just happened? Why did things escalate so quickly? This confusion is exactly what transactional analysis aims to solve. If structural analysis teaches us who is speaking inside us, the parent, adult, or child, then transactional analysis teaches us how these parts communicate and how every interaction between humans becomes a psychological exchange with hidden meanings, unspoken emotional triggers, and predictable patterns. Eric Berne describes every communication between two people as a transaction, a back-and-forth exchange of psychological energy. But these exchanges are not always equal, honest, or conscious. Most people think they're talking about the surface topic, but underneath, a much deeper conversation is happening between their hidden emotional states. To understand this, Berne introduces one of the most important ideas in psychology. Transactions can be complementary, crossed, or ulterior. Each type shapes the outcome of every conversation, whether it leads to connection, conflict, manipulation, or complete emotional shutdown. A complementary transaction happens when both people are speaking from compatible states. For example, adult to adult, child to child, or parent to child. This is when communication flows smoothly, when people feel heard, and when conversations stay healthy and productive. An adult-to-adult exchange, in particular, is the gold standard: clear, rational, respectful, and grounded in reality. But Berne warns us, most conversations do not stay this balanced. This is where cross-transactions appear, and these are the ones that spark arguments, hurt feelings, and emotional chaos. A cross-transaction happens when you expect one kind of response, but the person replies from a completely different ego state. You speak calmly as an adult, and the other person's child reacts defensively. You ask a simple question, but their parent voice criticizes your motives. Suddenly, the conversation falls apart because the psychological lines have crossed. These cross-transactions are the root of misunderstandings in relationships, friendships, workplace dynamics, and even casual encounters. A tiny comment becomes a personal attack. A suggestion becomes a threat. A question becomes an accusation. Why? Because people are not speaking from the same psychological level. But the most fascinating and dangerous type of transaction is the ulterior transaction. This is where the real games begin. Ulterior transactions happen when someone says one thing on the surface, but means something entirely different underneath. It is a message wrapped in another message. A double-layered communication where the spoken words hide emotional motives, fears, or manipulation tactics. This is how people flirt without admitting it, insult someone indirectly, guilt-trip others, or provoke reactions while pretending to be innocent. Berne explains that ulterior transactions are the foundation of psychological games. The secret scripts people use to get emotional payoffs without taking responsibility for their intentions. Every time someone says, "I'm fine," when they are clearly hurt. Every time a compliment carries a subtle insult. Every time someone pretends to ask a question, but is really issuing a command. Every time a person acts helpless to get attention or support. These are ulterior transactions in action. Berne emphasizes that to truly understand human behavior, you must learn to see beyond the spoken words and into the psychological intention. Transactional analysis gives us the lens to decode the hidden messages behind tone, posture, emotion, and choice of words. It reveals that every interaction has two layers: the social message, which is what we say; the psychological message, which is what we really mean. And most people live their entire lives blind to the second layer. This chapter also highlights a profound truth. People unconsciously repeat the same types of transactions again and again because it allows them to reenact old emotional patterns from childhood. Someone raised under strict parents may become overly compliant or rebellious in adulthood. Someone who learned to earn love through pleasing others may use submissive transactions. Someone who grew up being criticized may interpret neutral comments as attacks. Transaction after transaction, these psychological patterns shape their entire identity and relationships. By the end of the chapter, Berne makes one message crystal clear. If you can master transactional analysis, you can predict how people will respond, prevent conversations from spiraling into conflict, and communicate with clarity and power. You will no longer be confused when someone suddenly gets angry, sad, or defensive. You'll understand exactly which ego state is speaking and how to shift the conversation back into balance. Transactional analysis is not just a theory. It is a bold, eye-opening framework that pulls the curtain back on the emotional mechanics of human interaction. And it is the doorway to understanding the deeper games that people play beneath the surface of everyday life. Chapter 3: Procedures and Rituals. Before people ever play psychological games, before the conflicts, the hidden motives, and the emotional drama, They engage in something far more subtle and far more common: procedures and rituals. Eric Berne explains that these predictable social patterns are the quiet architecture behind everyday human interaction. They are the invisible scripts we follow without thinking, the socially accepted dance steps that guide how we greet, behave, connect, and create meaning in our daily relationships. Think about your morning. You probably followed the same sequence you followed yesterday, perhaps even the same one you followed for years. Wake up, check your phone, brush your teeth, shower, coffee. These repetitive behaviors are not random. They are procedures, the structured, logical sequences that help humans organize their lives and reduce chaos. Berne uses the word procedure to describe any action governed by reason, habit, or planning. Procedures allow us to function efficiently, manage expectations, and avoid uncertainty. They are how society ensures that things get done, whether it's attending a meeting, applying for a job, or visiting a doctor. Even conversations follow procedures: the polite questions, the predictable responses, the socially safe tone. Procedures are the rational backbone of human interaction. But humans are not driven only by logic. We are deeply emotional, relational beings, and this is where rituals come in. Rituals, according to Berne, are patterned social interactions designed not for practical efficiency, but for emotional safety. When you greet someone with "How are you?" even though you don't expect a literal answer, that is a ritual. When a family gathers every Sunday for dinner, that is a ritual. When coworkers nod at each other in the hallway, that too is a ritual. Rituals exist because humans cannot tolerate complete emotional unpredictability. They help us navigate social life without fear, without awkwardness, without having to reveal our true selves. Rituals are soothing, predictable, comforting, a way to maintain connection without vulnerability. Berne explains that rituals serve a powerful psychological purpose. They structure time, manage social distance, allow emotional expression, and maintain group identity. When two people shake hands, the gesture isn't about hygiene or necessity. It's an ancient ritual signaling trust, mutual recognition, and the absence of threat. When a child hugs a parent before bed, the ritual is emotional reinforcement, reassurance, and bonding. When communities gather for festivals, prayers, or celebrations, they participate in shared meaning, collective belonging, and emotional unity. But rituals can also be restrictive. They can trap people in patterns they never question. A couple might fight the same way every month because it has become their ritual of emotional release. A family may follow certain traditions not out of love, but out of obligation or guilt. Workplaces may create ritualistic behaviors that suppress individuality. Rituals can comfort, but they can also confine. Berne reveals something deeper. Both procedures and rituals are pre-game activities, the warm-ups before psychological games begin. They set the stage for how people interact, how trust is formed, and how unspoken expectations take shape. A ritual can hide resentment. A procedure can mask tension. A polite greeting can suppress anger that later explodes. These structured behaviors are the front stage of human life, but underneath them lies a backstage full of emotional complexity. To Berne, the way people structure their time through procedures, rituals, pastimes, games, and intimacy defines the quality of their psychological life. Procedures give stability. Rituals give belonging. But both are fragile, easily shaken if someone steps outside the expected script. When a ritual is broken, when someone doesn't greet you back, forgets a tradition, or disrupts a routine, it can trigger frustration, confusion, or even emotional pain. Why? Because rituals are the quiet glue that holds relationships together. Procedures and rituals are not good or bad. They are essential to human functioning, but they become powerful tools of understanding when we start noticing them consciously. When we observe how we greet people, how we respond to questions, how we follow routines, and how we expect others to behave, we begin to understand the psychological framework beneath our interactions. Berne's insight here is profound. Before you can decode the games people play, You must recognize the patterns they follow. People rarely jump straight into manipulation or conflict. They first follow procedures and rituals. They ease into conversations, establish familiarity, and create emotional boundaries. Only once these are in place do deeper dynamics emerge. Chapter 3 is a reminder that human interaction is not spontaneous chaos. It is a carefully scripted dance, performed daily without awareness. By understanding these scripts, you gain the ability to step outside of them, change them, or reshape them entirely. Procedures give your life structure. Rituals give your connections meaning. But awareness gives you freedom. Chapter 4: Pastimes. Every day, people engage in conversations that seem harmless, light, and casual, talking about the weather, gossiping, discussing sports, sharing small frustrations, or exchanging predictable jokes. On the surface, these interactions appear simple, insignificant, even trivial. But Eric Berne reveals a deeper psychological truth. These everyday conversations, which he calls pastimes, serve an essential purpose in human life. They are not meaningless chatter. They are an emotional survival mechanism. A pastime, according to Berne, is a structured, predictable pattern of social interaction that helps people fill time, maintain connection, and avoid deeper emotional exposure. It's what people do when they want to be social without being vulnerable, when they want emotional presence without emotional risk. Pastimes are the bridge between polite rituals and the intense world of psychological games. Think about how often people rely on these predictable exchanges. The neighbor you greet with the same casual remark. The coworker with whom you always complain about Mondays. The friend who always tells the same story about their boss. The relative who brings up the same topic at every gathering. These interactions follow familiar scripts because familiarity feels safe. With pastimes, people can connect without confronting anything uncomfortable. They get attention without intimacy, engagement without emotional depth, conversation without confession. Berne explains that pastimes are not random. They are chosen based on personality, culture, history, and ego states. Someone operating from the adult ego may engage in logical pastimes, discussing work, politics, or practical topics. A person in the parent ego might gravitate toward moralizing pastimes, giving advice, correcting others, or discussing what people should do. Someone in the child ego may prefer playful or dramatic pastimes, joking, teasing, complaining, or storytelling. What makes pastimes so fascinating is that they give people predictable emotional payoffs. When someone complains about their life and another person listens, both get something out of it. One gets sympathy, the other gets a sense of importance. When two people gossip, they validate each other while reinforcing their bond. When colleagues talk about weather or sports, they create a sense of shared reality, a subtle reassurance that they belong to the same world. These emotional transactions are quiet but powerful. But Berne digs even deeper. Pastimes help people structure time, a core concept in transactional analysis. Humans cannot endure unstructured time. It feels overwhelming, empty, and emotionally threatening. Without a plan, people begin to feel anxious or restless. So they fill time with predictable interactions that anchor them socially and psychologically. A pastime is essentially a safe container for human connection. And yet, pastimes have a hidden dual nature. They are both social glue and emotional camouflage. On one hand, they maintain relationships. On the other, they prevent genuine intimacy. People hide behind these rehearsed conversations because real honesty requires vulnerability, something many are unwilling to risk. The predictable nature of pastimes shields people from emotional unpredictability. Berne also notes that pastimes reflect social roles and group expectations. At parties, people drift toward the same familiar topics. In professional settings, they use polite pastimes to keep interactions smooth. Families rely on traditional pastimes, shared stories, repetitive jokes, predictable arguments to maintain a sense of identity. Over time, these repeated exchanges become part of the relationship's very fabric. What makes pastimes even more intriguing is that they are often the gateway to psychological games. Beneath a casual conversation, tension can build. A simple complaint may turn into victimhood. A small disagreement can escalate into conflict. A harmless joke may conceal resentment. Many games begin with a pastime, because it is through these surface-level exchanges that emotional motives are tested, boundaries are explored, and hidden scripts begin to surface. Berne suggests paying attention to how people choose their pastimes. This choice reveals their psychological comfort zone, their preferred ego state, and their underlying emotional needs. A person who always complains is searching for rescuers. Someone who always argues is seeking control or validation. A person who jokes constantly may fear showing seriousness or depth. A quiet person who sticks to small talk may be protecting themselves from emotional exposure. Pastimes are mirrors. They reflect the roles people play in social life. They reveal how individuals seek connection, protection, or validation. And though they often seem trivial, they reveal more truth than most people are willing to acknowledge. By understanding pastimes, you begin to see the architecture beneath casual conversation. You see that every interaction, even the simplest one, is a psychological exchange shaped by fears, needs, habits, and old emotional scripts. You recognize that people are not just talking. They are negotiating safety, belonging, attention, and identity. Berne's message becomes clear. Pastimes are the earliest stage of human bonding, but also the earliest stage of emotional avoidance. They are where people feel each other out, decide how much of themselves to reveal, and slowly slide toward either genuine connection or deeper psychological games. Chapter 4 opens your eyes to the subtle, invisible choreography behind everyday conversation. It shows that nothing in human interaction is random, not even the small talk we dismiss as just conversation. Pastimes are the quiet prelude to everything that unfolds between people: the trust, the tension, the games, and the intimacy. They are simple. They are predictable. But they shape the emotional world far more than most people ever realize. Chapter 5 Games. Every human relationship, no matter how loving, polite, or civilized it appears, hides an undercurrent of psychological tension. Beneath every polite smile, every casual conversation, every unexpected conflict, there is something invisible operating beneath the surface. Eric Berne calls these hidden patterns games, the unconscious, repetitive emotional strategies people use to manipulate, protect themselves, or gain psychological advantages without admitting their true motives. A game is not a simple argument or misunderstanding. It is a structured sequence of hidden emotional transactions where each person plays a role, follows a script, and seeks a payoff, even if they are completely unaware of it. Games are the emotional chess matches of daily life, and everyone plays them. Lovers play them. Friends play them. Parents and children play them. Bosses and employees play them. Entire societies play them. What makes games so dangerous and so fascinating is that they operate under two layers. One, the social layer, what people say openly. Two, the psychological layer, what people really mean, what they really want, and what they are emotionally acting out. The deeper layer is the truth, and Berne's insight hits like a psychological earthquake. Most people don't communicate to solve problems. They communicate to confirm old emotional patterns. Games allow people to re-experience familiar emotions: resentment, guilt, superiority, victimhood, purpose, or power, without admitting these needs out loud. The game gives them permission to feel these emotions while pretending everything is normal. Take a harmless-sounding conversation like, "I'm only trying to help." Berne would warn you, that sentence often begins a game. The helper may actually be seeking control, validation, moral superiority, or emotional dependence. The person being helped may secretly want to resist, sabotage, or prove their helplessness. The game ends not with solutions, but with emotional payoffs. This is the heart of Berne's analysis. Games always end with someone feeling justified, someone feeling wronged, someone feeling superior, or someone feeling validated. The emotions are familiar, predictable, and addictive. Games typically follow a three-step structure. 1. The setup. A seemingly innocent interaction begins. Both players sense the old emotional pattern they unconsciously crave. 2. The switch. A hidden motive emerges. The psychological transaction replaces the social one. 3. The payoff. The emotional explosion, guilt, blame, drama, or validation happens. Everyone unconsciously gets the feeling they were seeking. And after the payoff, players walk away repeating the same story. Why does this always happen to me? It happens because people are not just talking. They are playing out their internal emotional scripts. Berne provides dozens of examples. The person who constantly says, "Look what you made me do," always playing victim, always avoiding responsibility. The partner who provokes an argument for no reason, seeking the emotional release of being comforted afterward. The coworker who repeatedly asks for advice but never takes it, playing yes, but to remain helpless. The person who complains about being mistreated but secretly chooses relationships that mistreat them, reenacting a familiar childhood script. These are not accidents, they are psychological patterns. And then comes Berne's most shocking revelation. People choose partners, friends, jobs, and environments that allow them to keep playing their favorite games. The game gives them identity. The game gives them emotional continuity. The game gives them an unconscious sense of purpose. A person who grew up feeling blamed may unconsciously seek relationships where they can feel blamed again. Someone raised to feel superior will engineer conversations that allow them to moralize or judge. Someone taught to feel unimportant will gravitate towards situations where they can prove, again and again, that no one cares about them. In the logic of the subconscious, emotional familiarity is more important than happiness. Berne also distinguishes big games from little games. Little games are everyday dramas, gossip, guilt trips, passive-aggressive comments. Big games, however, become life patterns, chronic victimhood, repeated relationship failures, or endless cycles of conflict. Some games are so destructive they can ruin careers, marriages, families, or mental health. The chilling part: people rarely realize they are playing them. To them, everything feels natural, justified, even logical. This chapter pulls the curtain off human interaction. Once you understand games, you begin to see them everywhere: in conversations at the dinner table, in office politics, in friendships, in arguments, in flirting, in negotiation, and even in the way people talk to themselves. Berne offers one path out: awareness. Games only work when people are unconscious of their roles. The moment you recognize the script, the moment you see the pattern, the game begins to fall apart. When someone says, "Why do you always?" or "I was only trying to help," or "You never understand me," you begin to hear the psychological message beneath the words. You step outside the emotional trap. Games stop only when someone refuses to play. Chapter 5 is the emotional core of the entire book. It exposes the truth behind human conflict, manipulation, attraction, and misunderstanding. It shows that people rarely interact simply to exchange information. They interact to fulfill old emotional needs. Berne doesn't just reveal human behavior. He reveals the scripts beneath human behavior. And once you see the script, you can never unsee it. Chapter 6: The Significance of Games. To truly understand why people behave the way they do, why they argue the same way, fall into the same relationships, repeat the same mistakes, and experience the same emotional wounds, you must understand the significance of games. This chapter is not just an explanation, it is a revelation. It forces you to confront the hidden emotional engines that drive human life. Eric Berne makes something profoundly clear. Games are not random behaviors. They are the secret architecture of human relationships. Most people go through life believing their conflicts are caused by circumstances, misunderstandings, or the personalities of others. But Berne exposes a deeper truth. People gravitate toward emotional experiences that affirm their identity, even when those experiences hurt them. Games are the psychological pathways that lead them there. In other words, a game is not just something people play, it is something people need. Games serve several psychological functions, each one more revealing than the last. First, they provide emotional reinforcement. People need to feel a certain way about themselves: justified, superior, mistreated, helpless, noble, misunderstood, and games give them a predictable way to achieve that feeling. Someone who believes they are always the victim will consistently find themselves in situations where they feel wronged. Someone who believes others are incompetent will unconsciously provoke mistakes. These outcomes are not accidents. They are emotional destinations. Second, games provide structure. Humans cannot tolerate psychological uncertainty. Without structure, we feel anxious, adrift, or emotionally naked. Games offer a predictable script. Even if the script is painful, it is familiar. A couple may fight every weekend because the conflict gives their relationship a structure they unconsciously rely on. A person may sabotage their success because failure is the structure their mind understands. These repetitions become the emotional rhythm of their lives. Third, games protect the psyche through defense mechanisms. They allow people to express forbidden emotions, anger, fear, jealousy, resentment, without admitting them openly. Instead of saying, "I'm angry," a person might start a game that ends in a satisfying emotional explosion. Instead of admitting insecurity, someone may provoke others until they receive the validation they need. Games become a psychological disguise for emotions people are afraid to confront directly. Fourth, games preserve ego boundaries. They help people maintain a sense of identity. If someone has always seen themselves as the hero, they will play games that let them rescue others. If someone sees themselves as powerless, they will seek situations where they can once again feel defeated. The game reinforces who they believe they are, even when that identity is harmful. But perhaps the most profound significance of games is that they create scripts, lifelong emotional narratives people follow without conscious awareness. These scripts are often rooted in childhood, shaped by early interactions with parents, authority figures, or peers. A child who grows up feeling blamed may internalize the script, "I am always at fault." In adulthood, they may unconsciously play games that end with them being blamed again. A child who was rewarded for self-sacrifice may grow into an adult who repeatedly plays the martyr game. Games are not only emotional loops, they are emotional legacies. Berne stresses something crucial. People do not play games because they are bad. They play games because they are wounded, and because they lack the tools to express their emotional needs directly. Every game is a cry for something deeper: love, validation, respect, safety, control, significance, attention, understanding. But instead of openly expressing these needs, people play out elaborate psychological scripts that create chaos instead of healing. And this is the tragedy. Games keep people from authentic intimacy. They maintain distance while imitating closeness. They generate drama instead of vulnerability. They produce conflict instead of communication. A game may end with tears, guilt, or anger, but beneath it lies a simple, unspoken truth. I wanted connection, but I didn't know how to ask for it. Berne also warns that games become self-fulfilling prophecies. A person who insists, "No one cares about me," will unconsciously push people away until they get the rejection that completes the game. Someone who believes people can't be trusted will play games that provoke betrayal or abandonment. Over time, these outcomes reinforce their worldview, trapping them in a psychological loop that feels like fate. But the significance of games goes beyond individuals. It affects families, communities, and entire societies. Families develop multi-generational games. Workplaces become breeding grounds for competitive or manipulative games. Social groups use games to maintain hierarchy or belonging. Even political systems rely on collective games to shape identity and loyalty. Games are not just personal, they are cultural. Yet Berne ends this chapter with a message of hope. Games lose their power the moment they are recognized. Awareness is liberation. When you understand the emotional need behind a game, you gain the power to step outside it, to choose honesty over manipulation, vulnerability over strategy, communication over conflict, clarity over chaos. The significance of games is not just that they shape our lives. It is that once you see them, you can rewrite your entire emotional script. You can break the patterns you inherited. You can stop reenacting old wounds. You can choose who you want to be, not who your past trained you to be. This chapter is a turning point. It doesn't just explain games. It reveals their profound psychological importance, their emotional origins, and their transformative power. Once you understand the significance of games, you no longer see human behavior the same way. So after journeying through games people play, one thing becomes crystal clear. Human behavior is not random. The conflicts we fall into, the roles we play, the emotional cycles we repeat, they are all part of deeper psychological patterns. Patterns we rarely see but feel every single day. Eric Berne didn't just write a book. He handed us a mirror that shows us the truth about our relationships, our habits, and the hidden motives that shape our lives. And the real power of this book is not in identifying what others do wrong, but in finally understanding what we have been doing without even realizing it. Because once you see the games, the arguments that always end the same way, the emotional traps you walk into again and again, the roles you keep playing even when they hurt, you can't unsee them. This book gives you the chance to rewrite everything. Your communication, your relationships, your emotional reactions, your entire script. No more unconscious patterns. No more emotional autopilot. No more repeating the past. Now you have the awareness, and with awareness comes freedom. If this video helped you understand the psychology behind human behavior, then imagine what would happen if more people understood this. Imagine relationships where people actually listen. Conversations where people stop playing roles. Lives where people stop repeating the same emotional mistakes. That's why I want you to do 3 simple things. Which game do you think you've seen the most in your life, or even caught yourself playing? Your answer might help someone else realize something life-changing. It takes just 1 second, but it tells the YouTube algorithm that this content matters, and it helps this message reach more people who need it. If you're someone who loves understanding the hidden mechanics of human behavior, relationships, persuasion, and emotional intelligence, this channel is exactly where you belong. We're just getting started. At the end of the day, games people play reminds us of something simple but profound. People aren't trying to hurt each other, they're trying to be understood. Games aren't the problem. A lack of awareness is. And now you have the awareness. If you're ready to grow, ready to break patterns, and ready to transform how you think about human behavior, then stay with me. More life-changing insights are coming in the next videos. Thank you for watching. And remember, life changes the moment you stop playing games and start understanding them.